My next guest has had a distinguished career in scientific research and innovation. Dr. Susan Hockfield was the first woman to lead the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and is now its president emerita. Welcome, Susan. It's great to see you. I mean, this topic is one that you and I have talked about in the past, the conference ARPA-E at the Department of Energy, about what it takes to keep the ecosystem of science working. And I want to just tell our audience, drop everything and buy this book, The Age of Living Machines, How Biology Will Build the Next Technology Revolution. In there you talk about, mind-reading bionic limbs, computer-engineered crops, virus-built batteries, protein-based water filters, and on and on. And I got in this book a sense of the future that we don't have yet. And I guess my question is going to start out to you, are we in danger today of not getting to that future because of our ambivalence about investing in science?
Oh, I think we are in danger. This is an enterprise that few people understand, and we're always at risk of underinvesting and not getting the technologies that are just out of reach into our hands, and underinvesting in the not giving the people, the crazy people who believe they can make the impossible possible, not giving them the chance to actually deliver these technologies for us. So I think we're at enormous risk for a number of reasons, but I have to say it is always a delicate balance.
Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People's fear is high. Their hopes are high that science will save them. But we see things happening where institutions that we've trusted, like the CDC, are changing guidance left and right, where the FDA is seemingly changing its guidance over convalescent plasma. Are you worried that we're not making a strong enough case about how science works and what it needs to be safe, but also achieve results in the middle of this pandemic?
Yeah, Steve, I'm really worried because this is a moment when science is operating at its highest that I've ever seen it. We have tens of thousands of people, maybe even 100,000s of people who are just investing their blood, sweat, and tears to move science faster than we've ever done before, and do so in a way that's entirely safe, simply doing everything faster without cutting any corners. And that's not the message people are getting. And unfortunately, confidence in science is hard to have on your own unless you actually are a scientist. And having confidence in science, our scientific establishment, in our medical establishment, having trust in our doctors and our healthcare institutions is something that is easy to erode. People often say that reputation is built in drops and lost in buckets. And I'm quite concerned that the themes coming out of our leaders, our political leaders, do not emphasize the importance of the confidence in science, the confidence in experts and expertise. You don't get to be a scientist, you don't get to be a great engineer, you don't get to be a great clinician simply by waking up one morning and walking into a lab or walking into a hospital. This kind of expertise is built over years and years and years of study and practice. And I'm quite worried, frankly, about the national tone around experts in these domains that are critical for getting this pandemic under control, but even more broadly, to achieve the better technology future that I see quite clearly, we're going to have confidence and the kinds of investments that support that confidence in technologies of the future. So I have to say, episodically, I've worried about whether the nation has positioned itself and positioned its kind of ambitions to achieve the most that we can. I'm probably more worried now than I've ever been in that domain.
I didn't know I was going to ask you this question, but as I listen to you and I can feel the tension, is it time that the MITs, the Stanfords, the UCLAs and Berkeleys and Harvards and the places of high research all around, really in every pocket of the country, there are major research centers, there are scientists in every pocket of the country, not just at the powerful places. Does there need to be some sort of outreach to leaders in both parties where they say, hey, cool it, or we need to do this differently? Does there need to be a concerted action from the scientific and research community through which many of these leaders have gone through and sort of say, we need to have a reset?
Well, I'm not part of that activity right now, but while I was president, we spent a lot of time reaching out to our government representatives to give them the kind of material they need to actually speak intelligently on these topics. And I can be entirely confident that that's going on campuses around the country. The problem is that the news cycle is moved in a different direction. And the things that our leaders are choosing to speak about are not the kinds of things that build confidence in this enterprise. And so I think we really need an adjustment. And I'm hoping that in the context of the presidential campaign, we'll actually have a chance to really hear a deep debate about what science, technology, education, what they are and what they do, because it's kind of gotten lost in a, almost it feels like a schoolyard, fight rather than an intelligent conversation.
Right. We've also worked hard in today's forum to bring in some fascinating technologists who happen to be women, including yourself. Again, I love your book. This is what helped inspire today's forum. But Ellen Stofan was a former chief scientist at NASA. Franz Cordova, the former head of the National Science Foundation. Eddie Bernice Johnson and Mikey Sherrill, two representatives. Phyllis Arthur from the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, whose new CEO, Michelle McMurray Heath, is the first African-American woman there. So we've worked hard to invite all of you. Is this a deceptive moment, though, in the sense that we're showing a lot of women leaders, which is great, but it gives a sense that there are a lot of women leaders in science. So how much of a blind spot does the industry still have in terms of inclusion on race and gender in the technology track?
That's a really important point, and it's something I called out just today at the Mass Bio annual meeting, the State of Possible. So I think we're just not delivering on our resources, and I hate squandered resources. We spent the last several decades building a cadre of individuals, from every race, every ethnicity, women and men, who are ready to step into positions of leadership, ready to step into active involvement in tech transfer, and we haven't provided them the opportunities. We're part of an effort at MIT called the Future Founders Initiative to actually put the next paving stones in place so that women and minorities have a chance to move into the positions that they are justified to have today.
And let me just, also ask, I really appreciate this because I think it's so important. I've talked to many people. I'd just love to get your insights into what can actually be done. Is this something that we need to be going into early grade school and not only exposing more communities of color, more women, other non-traditional participants in these science and technology tracks, but also finding ways to support them, mentor them, give them resources over time. Like, what would that look like? Because I know you've been involved. I've talked to a lot of others. Say, if gravity is going where gravity is going, it's not going to happen. So explicit things need to happen. What are some of those from your view?
Oh, I would say all the above. And we have done a much better job than we did in the past of, providing opportunities for women and minorities to engage in what have been male-dominated areas of science and engineering, areas of my particular interest. But then there's always there's a glass ceiling still. At MIT, we've worked on this project called the Future Founders Initiative. And, right now, if you look at the venture capital industry, less than 3% of those venture capital dollars go to women-founded companies. And that's just a huge loss. We did an analysis across MIT, and if women faculty members at MIT were founding companies at the same rate that their male colleagues are founding companies, we would have 50 more companies founded. We're talking about 50 companies. Those are 50 new medicines, 50 new therapeutic devices. We can't afford to miss those opportunities obviously for our region, but also for the world. So I think we need to provide on-ramps. We're starting a Future Founders boot camp to help women and minorities become more conversant, more comfortable in the environments from which they've been excluded up until now. And we have a commitment from our area venture capital companies to do what they can to bring women into the conversation in ways that they haven't been before. So I think that the tools are there to be deployed, but we just have to see those tools put to use more aggressively.
I've got two more quick questions for you. We're going to have Franz Cordova on with us today, and of course she used to run the National Science Foundation, and I was somewhat surprised that their budget was so small. It kind of bounces between $7 and $8 billion. So if that budget were to be doubled or tripled, say take it up to $25 billion, would that make a huge impact in the science ecosystem in the nation?
I believe that increasing funding for NSF would make an outsized impact. Here's the reason why. France is part of it. I admire her so much, I can't sufficiently describe it. So for the convergence of biology with engineering to really take hold, we need ways of funding people who are interested in crossing the boundaries between biology, physics, and engineering. And the way our funding agencies are set up, that's very hard. So the National Institutes of Health is focused on biology and medicine. Historically, the NSF has focused on computation and engineering with a little bit of biology. Department of Energy is by and large mostly physics. But under France's leadership, she's taken up convergence. She took up convergence as a major thing for NSF, so that if the NSF were expanded with a particular focus on activities that bridge fields, it would be a game changer. I can't tell you how many of my colleagues who are working in this convergent domain, how hard they've struggled to get funding simply because our agencies aren't set up to evaluate those kinds of proposals. I think NSF is perfectly positioned to be essentially the feedstock for a new set of technologies. The other thing that's been proposed for NSF, for which I'm a really big advocate, is the distance between discovery and application is growing smaller and smaller. And to encourage that, I think is perfectly appropriate for government-funded agencies to do. And again, this is a place that NSF can play almost uniquely. So you've touched on something that's near and dear to my heart. I would double, triple the budget of NSF with a particular focus on what NSF can do uniquely.
Well, I hope you'll come back when we talk this, because I'm going to write a piece about it. It just seems to be a no-brainer to me, but I'm just an opinion guy. Finally, I'm interested in the global dimensions of this, because if we were having this discussion today in Tianjin or Shanghai, or maybe Tokyo, or in India, and any number of places, the level of awareness about the significance of investment in science and technology, public-private partnerships between firms and universities and government institutions that also do research, that's where gravity goes. People already know it, and it's there. Do we run the risk in the United States of really falling behind and losing geopolitically to countries like China and India because we're not tending this ecosystem of science?
Steve, it's not a risk. It is a real and present danger. And actually, it's an exciting thing to have happened. Not so many years ago, the United States was kind of the standalone leader, but we have an open system of intellectual commerce, and we share what we know with the rest of the world. Every week when I was president of MIT, someone was in my office from somewhere else in the world saying that we want to build an innovation-based economy, and we know we need an institution like MIT to do that. Help us build one. So the competition has been rising. We haven't made it a secret how we've done what we've done, but the competition right now is really intense. And it would not be hard for us to drop into second place or third place with the kind of commitment other nations are making. If you look at MIT's graduate students, just as kind of, again, the seedlings of the future enterprise, 60% of them were not born in the United States. This has been the tried and true route to success for people who are new to this country. Restricting the flow of determined, ambitious immigrants, young people to this country, is like putting a noose around our necks. And similarly, not funding these early enterprises, the fundamental science, the fundamental engineering that leads to technologies of the future, at which the United States has been extraordinarily successful. Not to fund that is giving up our leadership to other countries around the world who are ready, willing, and able to take on the mantle of technology leadership. So I think it's exciting to be in a race, but it's only exciting to be in a race if you've prepared yourself to win.
Well, Susan Hockfield, I want to thank you because the age of living machines, which I encourage people to take back, it is an opportunity to sort of get a peek at a future. 10 years ago, we might not have seen many of the technological achievements we have today. And so you give us a peek, but it's a very important thing that you were candid, that our getting to that future is a shaky one, and it's not necessarily guaranteed. So Susan Hockfield, former president of MIT, thank you and congratulations on the book, and thanks for sharing your candid thoughts on this with us today.
Thanks, Steve. It's always fun to talk with you.